How you doing? Fine. How many times have you answered like that and it's not been true? In many ways, I'm fine. It's probably the first lie we ever tell. So today, I invited on old friend of mine, Kapil Gupta, along with Jonnie Jenson, Mike Sherry, Simon Walker and Steve McDermott. And we talked about their new book, Being Fine, the Other F Word. As well as talking through this book, we talked about how authenticity, the willing to be vulnerable, is often really difficult for men. And how much like pushing down those emotions, pushing down that pain and not being able to share them actually creates a place where men can't thrive and where men start to suffer. And when men suffer, others suffer. Check out the video, see if you like it. And if you do like the video, don't forget, subscribe, click the bell so you can be kept up to date. All right, said Susan, I'm not stupid. You're saying humans need fantasies to make life bearable. Terry Pratchett. Thank you, everyone. Thank you for coming to our regular slot in the Magnificent Man project. A little bit later than usual, but thank you very much for coming, all of you that are watching at home. And thank you to our guests that have come to talk about their book today. So I think we're going to let's just dive straight in. Let's hear a little bit about the book and what it's about.
Sure, I can tell you about that.
Go for it, Johnny.
Being Fine, the Other F Word. It was the inspiration, the brainchild of Joe Baldwin-Trott, and it really was in response to the number of men. We're all familiar with this in our lives, but you say to them, "How are you?" "Yeah, I'm fine. I'm fine." Like, don't ask me. I'm fine. Like, head down, keep going. And there's a truth behind that phrase, which rather than it being the absolute honest answer, it's the complete opposite of that. It's covering up everything that they really have got going on and want to say. And then, particularly in men's circles, although we're in the Magnificent Men project today, I dare say it's slightly different. In lots of men's groups, it's increasingly changing. But traditionally, you ask your mate, "How's it going?" and they say, "Fine." And you say, "Brilliant, me too." Meanwhile, you're both sat there, depressed, bankrupt, failing in your marriage, alcoholic, someone's committed suicide. Like, there's a whole lot of mess going on, which if we actually took the time to say, "What, you're really fine?" they might just say, "Actually, no, I've had a kind of tough week," or this happened this week and it's really knocked me sideways. And Joe's books from Proper Publishing, they very much touch on the human side of stories of women's leadership. It's like the story behind that. The Being Fine series, which is number 1, we're here today. Number 2 is actually in planning, and it's digging beneath the surface and really saying, well, why do men say that? What's really going on? And then, as you'll come to hear as we all share our story today, what's really going on is the same thing for all of us. It might be alcoholism, it might be bankruptcy, it might be depression, it might be a marriage that's going wrong. But when the experience is shared, it's the same. I feel alone. I didn't know what to do. I couldn't tell anyone. I was ashamed. It was too much. And so, I'm getting goosebumps as I'm saying this, but it's a leveler, because as you read that story and you experience, you can feel the same things that person was feeling, but your story's different. You suddenly go, "Oh my gosh, I'm not the only one." And that is where the conversation opens up. That's where a little space appears for someone else to say, "Oh yeah, I'm struggling as well." And if from conversations like this today, if from books like Being Fine, the Other F Word, if from men's groups that are bubbling up everywhere, if more men can be the man they want to be and still be there for the people in their lives, then perhaps we can be more satisfied in our life. Perhaps we can be a be there for the people that we want to be there for, and be there for ourselves. And most importantly, we can reduce the rate of male suicide in the world.
Yeah, I mean, one of the things that is at the center of this group really is kind of 4 principles, and that's kind of connection, challenge, contribution, and celebration.
Yeah.
And try and encourage men to kind of do that more. And the sort of the connection idea kind of comes in 2 parts really. There's sort of connection with ourselves and connection with other people. And I think that like that kind of stock response instantly kind of shuts down both people really in a conversation. You know, like exactly what you were saying. You go from fine, great, now we can move on. So no, it's almost a platitude to ask the question. And even though it has been asked, it's even more of a platitude to kind of answer it with, I'm fine.
Yeah.
So it's something that I can relate to, and I'm sure lots of men kind of relate to in their communication with other men, that kind of stock response that comes up. So what was the sort of impetus for this book? What was the nugget that kind of started this off as a project?
I mean,
I can.
Go on, Kapil. You've been on lots of lives with Joe. I'm sure you've heard her explain this before.
Yeah, I think the impetus was I think Joe had a friend whose husband passed away, and I can't remember if it was COVID or something else, where they always said I'm fine, and by the time it was all diagnosed, it was too late. And I think that's where the inspiration really came from. And I think she started talking to a lot of other men where, and in her own life as well, in her sort of relationship, it was kind of like a pattern where men were not able to or wouldn't share their emotions or feelings, and would just like be in this stoic sort of place, like, yeah, I'm fine, I'm dealing with it, and not ask for help. I think that was like the key sort of place where she got the call, oh, okay, I want to write this book. And from then on, I think she just like approached lots of men if they were willing to write their own story. And that's I think the beautiful thing about this book for me is that there's 15 people who've written their stories, 12 men and 3 women, and each story is just so vulnerable, so open, so full of hope. It's like it's very heartwarming and touching stories, and really deep stories of like how some of us contemplated suicide, how some of us dealt with depression or mental well-being, or even like someone in our lives who had gone through something like that, and really talking through those from a very, very personal level, and seeing how once we started to share, once we got to a place where we could talk about it, we could talk about our feelings, we could acknowledge our feelings and share, we found something, we found like the joy or being able to not just cope with it, but actually flourish in life. And I think that is what is so beautiful about this book.
Okay, thank you. And as you were speaking now, I became aware that I kind of I jumped the gun really at the beginning of this, at the beginning of going live, and kind of didn't get a chance to kind of introduce. Didn't get a chance. I ballsed it up and I didn't introduce you all. So what I'm going to do now is, like, I know you're all contributors to this book, so perhaps if we could just go around and each of you could tell us introduce yourself, and then tell us a little bit about your particular story in there. It's probably the best way that we're going to get that anyone watching will get a flavor of what the book is about. So shall we start with, I'm going to randomize it just to put someone on the spot, and Steve is smiling the most, so we're going to start with you, Steve.
Thanks, Lawrence. My name's Steve McDermott. I'm a professional motivational speaker from Yorkshire, which is maybe a contradiction in terms. My chapter's called The Old Me, The Depressed Me, and The New Me. So the old me, if people saw me on stage or doing my day job, like a Duracell bunny, full of energy, like you say, smiling a lot. That was the old me. That's part of the chapter. The next chapter is about how I suffered from acute clinical depression twice. And my big message really there is the misunderstanding around mental health, and also how difficult it is as a man to be vulnerable, especially if you're my age and from north of England, being one example of that. And how I came out of that, and how the final part of the chapter is the new me. And so I'm fortunate enough to be able to look back on my challenges with mental health and see them as a gift, which I didn't do at the time. But I think I'm a better version of me now that I'm prepared to be vulnerable and talk about these things than ever was before. So that's what my chapter's about.
Great, thank you very much, Jonnie.
Great to be here. Yeah, my name's Jonnie Jenson. I'm a dad coach and creator of the Team Super Dad community and the Hero Academy program. I have got 2 lovely kids. I'm divorced. I've got a boy and a girl, Jago and Rosie. I'm divorced. I've been divorced for the last 5 years. And as of basically this week, I seem to have found myself a girlfriend, which is the first time since the separation. So that's very exciting. My chapter, it really is about how my marriage, which was everything I'd always hoped for. My mum died when I was 9, and from that point on, I was like, when I create my family, when I've got my family, when I've had my kids and then falling in love, getting married, everything was great, and then it just started to just go wrong. Things, life challenges, miscarriages, financial difficulties, postnatal depression, and it just felt like sand running through my fingers, this most precious thing. And I was like, and the more I frantically tried to fix it, the worse it got. And as I focused on everybody else, my children, my wife, my business, my startup, like the thing I didn't focus on was me. And yeah, I felt tired, and yeah, I felt depressed. I was, one night I was, searching Google, like, am I burnt out? And, the reality is, if you're searching Google for am I burnt out, you probably are. And also I said in my chapter, I was drinking Red Bull to stay awake and watching porn to fall asleep. It was that messed up. But in my mind, I was like, if I can keep going, we'll get to the other side. And it wasn't till my brother took his life, Christmas 2014, that was like Jenga. The final brick in my wall was taken out, and just down I came. And my marriage ended, and I started to piece myself back together. And really, that's my story. And just the essence of men trying their hardest to keep going, but not looking after themselves. And my message from my chapter is that if you don't give a percentage of your time, if 25% of your time isn't spent on you, then you can't give the rest of the time to everybody else, because you're just going to run yourself ragged. And thankfully, I bounced back. I mean, this whole book is about people bouncing back, but that really was my story about bouncing back from the depths of despair and upset, a lost marriage, not seeing my kids. I bounced back, and here I am today.
It's interesting, isn't it? That, like, I'm very involved in men's work, and that kind of it seems like one of the hardest lessons for men to learn is looking after themselves as a resource.
Yeah.
It seems like that kind of burnout from I've got to do all this stuff for everyone else, and if I can just keep going, and all the time, the main resource there is just being depleted and depleted and depleted.
Yeah. Like a builder rushing back to get more cement to fix up the wall, and then one day go in there and be like, oh my gosh, there's no more cement left. And it's like that literally, especially for blokes who are working, that dig in the hole, or you know, or just suddenly get into the bottom and be like, oh my gosh, there's nothing left. There's nothing. I didn't think this was ever going to run out. I thought there would always be enough. I thought I could get us through this.
Yeah, it is. Hopefully stuff like this is going to start changing that. It's one of the reasons that we have kind of within this group, we go to the idea of celebration so much, as a way of just pausing actually and going, okay, that bit's done, so now I can recuperate, putting in those mini breaks, you know, just as a way of checking in. Okay, thank you. Simon, let's hear from you, my friend.
Pleased to meet you. Yeah, my chapter, mountain climbed. A mountain was very important in my story. My involvement with the book, I had a friend that was involved with Silver Linings. So she knew Joe. Joe contacted me at a very opportune moment. I won't tell you when. You're going to have to read the book and read the chapter for that bit. But yeah, I always felt that I had a completely unremarkable story until I started talking about it and people got really interested. I've just sort of bimbled through life, hit a bit of a divorce, a couple of years later, split up with another woman, so kind of lost everything and went to pieces. And it really shocked me how quickly from up here to, you know, feeling the depths of depression that happened. You know, I've always played the fat, happy chap. And within 6 months, I was at the top of a mountain wanting to die. And thankfully, obviously, I didn't. And that story, that 13 years, and Jonnie said it beautifully, piecing things back together, doing the work, working with myself and with others and sharing and opening up the heart. That's what I want, and that's what I'm passionate about sharing with other people, particularly men. I now work in a college in construction. I've had a background of construction all my life where it's all very macho and, you know, people don't talk about emotions because that's a weakness. And, yeah, I mean, the building trade's got, if the suicide rate is 3 times higher for men than it is women, the construction industry is 3.7 times higher again for suicide rate. So it's that macho culture that I'm trying to work with in colleges and dispel that myth of the traditional macho and, show a bit of vulnerability as true strength. That's what I wanted to get through in my story. And I think that comes through in all our stories.
Okay, thank you very much. Again, it's like that thing of the kind of need for us in a way as men to kind of get to create spaces. I'm a big, I've met Kapil largely through men's groups, and that it's really hard to get over. I think to people who have kind of not been in a situation where they can be with other men and really share in an open way to really kind of get through just how kind of refreshing and liberating it is, and really how necessary it is to kind of create these spaces where we can drop the sort of fine, to drop the fine and be able to say, well, actually, if we could spend a little bit of time talking on this, it's not all gravy,
And setting that example, Lawrence, that very small, the pebble in the pond, that small ripple, it does go on because people changed. When I went back to the building site, and people changed how I was as a person. They saw that I was approachable, and again, there's a bit in the book where this big ugly chap comes to me and says, I'm feeling like shit. And we broke that down and we unpicked it. And, the story goes on, if you will. He shared an awful lot and that he got a great deal from that. So those men's groups and those working with others is so important.
Yeah, it is for sure. Mike.
Yes, hi.
Please.
Hi, yeah. So my name is Mike Sheridan. It's great. It's great to have this chat, by the way, with a bunch of guys, because we've spoken a lot about the book, and obviously it's been Joe and other women, etc. But I'm enjoying this men's group chat, shall we say? So yeah, no, me. I've spent 35 years in corporate sales, and interestingly, hearing the last few comments about keeping going, Jonnie saying keeping going, and a few others saying that. I stepped off the hamster wheel 2 years ago with critical hypertension. That's what keeping going does to a man. And if you don't know what hypertension is, it's basically your blood pressure being through the roof and you're about to die of a heart attack or a stroke. But that's got nothing to do with my chapter, actually. It's just another story. My chapter is called His Menopause. So I'm just going to let that land with the guys in the room, because again, having that chat with men is a kind of different, or solely men, or just guys, is a different conversation. It's like we're down the pub having a proper chat about this. My chapter is about basically what happened to my then marriage, which is 10, 12 years ago. And I was completely clueless about the lifetime change, about the change that happens to our female partners. I did not understand what it was. I had no vocabulary about it. I had to read books and teach myself. And I became aware that for some women, it's very mild in terms of a transition, a change in life. And men go through a change in life as well, I believe, at midlife or certain times in life. But other women, in terms of their reaction to it, is completely off the scale. And every female on the planet will go through this. If we all live long enough, we're gonna experience things. And so my chapter is about kind of like the trauma, the emotional trauma of living with that over a period of time, not understanding what it was, being subjected to all kinds of false accusations that just came out of nowhere, completely out of character, and witnessing what chemically manufactured hormone does to somebody. And that's just my opinion. I'm not speaking about this from any medical knowledge or standpoint. It's just, I believe that's what I witnessed. And if the pharmaceutical industry are culpable, it wouldn't be the first time. Because if half the global population are going to say, well, hey, let's just take some hormones now because I'm experiencing some symptoms that are difficult to live with, and that makes things far worse, then, the snowball continues. It's no coincidence that between the ages of 45 and 55, that's when the vast majority of us, sadly, or break up in terms of marriage and divorce and what have you. The statistics in North America are higher than that. So, but anyway, the two parts to my chapter, one is obviously a bit about that, my experiences of it and what it did to me personally. And what it did to me personally was, took me to a point of being diagnosed with critical level of anxiety, requiring sleeping tablets because I wasn't sleeping at all. And I had all kinds of other physical ailments going on with me that I didn't understand. So it's about that trauma, that period in life. That can happen to all of us, right? And as men, we're clueless, and women tend to be clueless. So if they don't know what's going on with them, how do we know, And it's about my journey back from that. So healing, recovery, and so on and so forth. So there's the hope to your, Lawrence, your earlier tagline there. I think that was one of the things that you were looking for. But I believe it's something that needs to be talked about. And I believe it's something that men need to be included in the conversation if this is no longer a taboo subject. So anyway, that's me. And that's my chapter.
That's interesting because, I've never even, the impact of menopause, I've never even thought of that. I've never even thought of that as something that, probably is going to be heading my way fairly soon. And I've never even thought of that as I guess in a way I kind of always thought that's her that's going to be earthy.
Yeah.
And and I hadn't really thought about the kind of the impact that has, because when you said like my menopause, I thought like, oh, this is going to one of these stories, a man's change that comes in midlife. That's really interesting. I'm looking for. I don't have a copy of the book yet, so I'm really looking forward to getting one so I can read it. There we go. Yes, that brings us round to Kapil, a man who anyone who's watching this will not be a stranger to. He's now been all over the Magnificent Man project, but welcome back. And I'm interested to hear what your chapter's about, my friend.
Thanks, Lawrence. Yeah, it's just so beautiful, I think, listening to everyone again. My chapter is called Dare to Be Sensitive. And it's funny, like I haven't been through the extremes of necessarily, the depression or mental illness. However, my thing is I got to a place where my life was about not feeling anything. It was like I suppressed all my feelings throughout my life. I talk about in my chapter how like something happened when I was young, where I thought that being sensitive, who I was, really, really sensitive boy when I was young, that being sensitive was somehow wrong. Feeling that much was wrong. And anytime I went through any kind of intense emotional experience, I told myself that that's not the right way to be. And I consciously shut myself down to feeling those emotions, to the point that, I got to a point where my dad passed away. It's now almost 20 years ago. But when he passed away, I didn't feel anything. I couldn't bring myself to feel anything. And it took me 10 years after that to really mourn his passing. And so my chapter is about that story. And then over the last 8 years or so, the work that I have done to realize just how important it is for men to like be in connection with our own sensitivity, with our own emotions, with our own, like looking at vulnerability as strength as opposed to weakness. Because, when I started on this journey, if anyone talked about vulnerability, the only thing I could think of that was a weakness. But when it comes to being in this world, living as a full, whole human being, part of what I've learned is that I have to not just be in approval of it, but as you say, celebrate those parts of me, because that is what is needed in connection with other human beings. So that's my chapter. And, a lot of the work that I do with men is very much about like a couple of areas that I find with men. One is we carry on holding so much of the burden, like we have our own emotions, we take on other people's emotions, but we don't share it because we don't want to share our burden with anyone else. And then the other part of it, where as men, I think there's something about relating with other men, where in our culture, we've got to a point where if we open up to someone, there's a sense that they will take advantage of us, rather than actually having a brotherhood or just like taking the risk where we can open up to someone and give them the chance. Whether they will take, advantage or not is completely aside, but open up for our own sake, and that's why I do the men's work and running men's group and a lot of men's coaching for that reason, because that was my journey. Like, I literally remember a moment where I used to say to myself, is like, nothing can hurt me. You can do anything to me emotionally. Nothing can faze me, as if that was, a medal. That was an honor, that I've got to a point where nothing phases me, only to realize that I was just like suppressing all my feelings and emotions. So yeah, so that's really my chapter where my call, I think, to men is to be more daring and sort of be in approval of our sensitivity and show it.
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting because that kind of echoes, really, in many ways, that kind of echoes a lot of my own story, and also kind of a lot of why, when I first got involved in kind of men's work, that access to vulnerability was one of those things that was like, that was one of the things that blew me away, actually, when I was first around it, because it turned every model of masculinity that I'd been presented to that time on its head. You know, what I'd always learned is that the sort of, the stronger you were, for want of a better word, the less penetrable you were, really, in a way, was better. Like, that was where safety lies. And then suddenly I was around these men who were kind of opened up and being really vulnerable. And then suddenly I was like, no, somehow they seem safer. Somehow they seem more solid. This is counterintuitive to me.
Yeah.
Kind of, and that came up when I was listening to Simon talking as well. That thing of like, one of the big lessons that I've kind of taken from men's work is that, like, actually, the more I practice being vulnerable, you know, the more I practice it, say, in a men's group, and then take it out into my life much more, which thankfully I think it's one of the life-saving things I've done, is learn to be vulnerable, is like, the more it allows other men to do that too. You know, I'll often hear kind of guys say, oh, like, or when men first come to men's groups, for example, I'll hear them say, I wish we could talk like this everywhere. And you're like, actually,
Yeah.
you can. Actually, like, after a while you do. And then I guess I kind of always thought there'd be a fear that if I was vulnerable, I was going to face ridicule somehow, or be exploited, like you were saying, in some way. And actually, what I've learned is, even men not involved in men's work or doing any of that sort of stuff, seemingly, are always really happy when I seem to give them the chance to, just by being it myself. You know, like, even if it's not in the group, there'll be those little side conversations, like Simon with someone will come up and say, actually, I was really kind of, and I'm really, this, I guess what I want to do, just before I carry on 1 second, is just to remind anyone who's watching in the group, it has a men's group feeling. So I kind of thought I was in one for a moment there and kind of forgot we're actually streaming live. So anyone who is watching, just a little reminder that please feel free, comment in the group. I am checking it here. Comment in the group. There will be room for your questions afterwards. But what I wanted to do was come back to that idea of, like, the men's group, really, because it has this feeling of a men's group here. And from hearing you all share, it's like it's almost like check-ins from a men's group, these chapters of the book. But Steve, we were talking before, and you were saying that there's female contributors to this book, and I was really interested in we spoke a little bit about the reasons for that. I just wondered if you could just address that for us again, please.
My point, well, this is particularly my own personal experience, but I think, and also the reason we've got women involved. So my big passion with this whole topic of mental health, not just men, is the misunderstanding that surrounds it. So, you know, I'm a motivational speaker, right? So you think I know how to motivate myself, wouldn't you? So I used to believe that you're either a glass half or a glass half full type person. That's what most people believe. If you read that rag that is the Daily Mail, right, they often have a feature in there where they interview a sort of B-list celebrity, and they ask them questions like, can you still run up a flight of stairs? Yeah. And then one of the questions is, have you ever been depressed? And I would say 99.9% of those celebrities say, no, I've never been depressed because I'm mentally strong, right? And I used to believe that before I had my encounters with being mentally unwell. So the point I would make, first of all, is anybody, 1 in 3, 1 in 4 people could suffer from some form of anxiety, depression, and probably even more given the current challenging circumstances we're living in. So it's never been more important for us both to whatever sex you are, wherever you come from, to have a better understanding of it. You would never dream of saying to somebody with a broken leg, just cheer up, just you'll be fine, right? But you would to somebody who's mentally unwell. And even now, when I'm prepared to be vulnerable, the amount of people say to me, of all the people I know, Steve, I can't believe you could be mentally unwell, right? But I think women, and I'm generalizing wildly here, are better at dealing with this than men. And it's to do with communication. And women, generally speaking, and it is a massive generalization, are much better at talking about the feelings earlier and not wearing the mask. If there's a theme that runs through, Johnny's right, there's a theme that we all have different stories and unique to us. It's a theme that runs through the book. It's this wearing the mask. So that's to do with being, whatever it means to be a man, being macho, being vulnerable. I was taught being from the north of England and being my age, big boys don't cry, all that stuff. Because one of the things you do a lot when you're depressed or not feeling well, or you've got challenges in your life, is cry, right? And so if you just take that as one example of what it means to be macho. So the women have a view on it, I think. And I think if I was generalizing what the women say, it's like, we need to understand this better as well. We might think we're better at listening, and yes, maybe you are, but we don't understand, just like most people don't, what mental ill health is. Everybody wants to get busy on the causes. Some of the causes are obvious, like in Johnny's case, messy divorce or whatever, or the menopause with Mike or whatever it might be, right? But in my case, they never got to the cause. Everybody wanted to find the cause. Sometimes we don't know. The doctors often, there can be many causes for it. And people want to talk about the causes quite often. And I think the other challenge, which I would put out there to men's group, is it's good to talk about this. But all these slogans that say it's good to talk, the bit they forget is it's almost impossible to find the words. And so we need support to be articulate, because when people ask me when I was really depressed, I could not find, literally, and I do this for a living, I could not find the words, right? So sometimes it's just being there, not necessarily saying anything.
Yeah, I mean, what that brings to mind is a couple of years ago now, I was asked to go and do a talk at to do a talk and a workshop at a school, a secondary school. And one of the things I did was I'd done a communication workshop there. And this communication workshop, it ended up having 100 boys in this room. So what I'd done is I broke them into pairs. And the first thing I'd done was said, right, I thought this is going to be really, I'd never worked with anyone that age before. And I got these boys and I said, right, you're going to face each other in pairs. And one of you is going to talk about something that upset them last week, the last thing you can remember that upset you. And all that you have to do on the other side is listen. There's no response. There's nothing you have to do. All you've got to do is listen. And so I started off, and it's just going on for a while. And I'm looking around, and a couple of them were okay with that. The vast majority could not do that. It was so uncomfortable for them. And there was literally two who just ended up like punching each other. Like, I mean, they hadn't got into a fight, but it was so uncomfortable. They'd so wanted to break that thing of, oh, let's go, here's a little punch, that and it just sort of brought home to me actually exactly what you're talking about. Like, you hear these things and they say, oh, let's, ask your friend twice, or say, I'm always here to talk, and, put it on your Facebook group. But we're never taught how to have that conversation. If someone actually does phone you up and go, do you know what, I'm in trouble here, or this ain't working out. Like, yeah, we don't teach people what to do when that call comes. And also, the amount of time I spend working with men just to really get some sense of just real sort of just any form of emotional intelligence, really, just to be able to actually define what it is they're feeling, rather than a roundabout way, actually being able to narrow down and say, this is actually what's going on for me, is much harder than you say. So thankfully that does seem to be changing. I mean, there are, I know there's lots of people in here who are doing work around stuff like that. So please continue doing it. And any tips or anything you have, feel free to share in this group.
Lawrence, can I add onto the back
Please do.
because this came up in one of the other lives we did, and not having the words to say can be a reason that men open up. That men don't open up, right? But also, not knowing what to say to a mate that just flipping fell to pieces in your lap can be really daunting for a lot of men. So, like, I want to ask him if he's all right, but I don't know what I'm going to say to him if he's like. So that can be a barrier for men as well. And I shared a story. My best mate in the pits of my breakup, marriage, divorce, fighting for the kids, he said, "Do you want to go climbing?" Right? I was like, "Yeah, definitely." He goes, "I'll sort it out. He's a climber, right? He's got everything, all the ropes and stuff." And he booked it up, and it probably cost him. It's irrelevant what it cost him, right? He's got enough money that it didn't matter what it cost me, right? It's not about the money. It's just he took me out of my everyday life and took me somewhere that he knew was a break from the routine.
Yeah.
And all we really did, I mean, the conversation might have come up a couple of times, right? But more than that, we just hung out. It was a change of scene. The sun was shining. We were up a mountain. Sometimes it was raining. Sometimes it was snowing. We got to the top of one place. There was a mountain hut thing you had to go in. It was like, and it was a dorm with all bed, and we sat and drank beer and played cards. And he's not the kind of guy like. I like to hug him, yeah. Like if he just stands there like this, he's not a hugger. And in the same way, he's not an open up kind of counselling sort of guy as well. So, but my message to men that might be worried about that is that what your mate needs is just needs you to be his mate. Like if you can create the space for him to have some fresh air, to see a different perspective, to get out of the thing that's getting him down, then that could be enough, and and together then you can be like, oh well, look, maybe I'll help you, or I've heard about this book, or have you run Calm, or like, that might be all that guy needs to do, or come and join the Mankind Project, like, or Magnificent Men, like that could be enough. But my message is, men, don't worry about what you've got to say. Just have your mate know that you're there for them.
Yeah. I mean, I remember reading a thing. No, I was watching an interview with Nick Hornby, and he was talking about Fever Pitch. His famous book about supporting Arsenal, and there was a really interesting bit where he said, actually, what I could have called that book is what men are not talking about when they're talking about football. And he didn't mean that in a negative way. He was talking about what you were saying. It wasn't that thing of, oh, we go and watch football and follow football because we don't want to, we're trying to hide from talking about stuff. But sometimes that's just the break that's needed, just to be with each other rather than having to kind of go through it all, and just the importance of really just kind of being there with people when that and allowing the space for when it does come, if it's going to come.
And in this world we live in today, right? Modern man, yeah, we help out, we do the shopping, we change the baby, we I say it a lot in Team Superdad, like, if your wife irons all your bloody shirts, you better be cleaning the toilet, right? Like, we're like, this is the modern man, and I've lost my bloody train of thought. It's gone completely. That's what happens, isn't it?
You're talking about the kind of being there with each other.
Sorry. So modern men is that we can sometimes feel guilty about, like, there's no time left. Or she says to us, oh yeah, well, you said you were going to help out here, or you said you were going to do that, or you're going to the pub again, are you? And like, do you know what? Like, so long as you're not the kind of bloke that goes to the pub 5 nights a week, sometimes you've got to just say, this goes back to my point from earlier. Yeah, I am. Well, we're not actually going to the pub. We're going for a bike ride, and then we're going to flip in throw skimmers at the down at the beach kind of thing. It's like yeah, I am going to spend some time with my yeah, I am going to the match. Why are you going to the match? Not to get blind drunk and flipping have a fight. No, I'm going to the match because it's going to make me a better husband.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, I'm a skateboarder still at 47 years old.
Don't say. I never guess. Okay.
And there's quite a big, it's a growing community of kind of middle-aged skateboarders. It's a great thing. And one of the things that's quite interesting about that is the men tend to get into it really because they used to skate and then suddenly their kids are now at the age and so they go out with them. But one of the things that kind of happens is there's this transition where they're like, I just want to go without the kids. I just want to go out and be with the rest of the older skaters, right? And it is exactly for that. It's exactly for that. It's like, it don't make you a bad dad because you don't want to take your son or daughter with you all the time when you're going to do that. Half the time, it's not about the skating when we're there at all. It's actually just really about standing there, having a laugh, talking about because there's a true saying in skateboarding, the older you get, the better you were. So talking about how fantastic we were when we were
it was this big.
This big. And but I think it is important, and I think that's a really important message that you're kind of bringing to this, is that thing of like, it's okay to want to go out and kind of not be with the family, because we're much more family orientated, I think, generally as men than previous generations have been. But I do think we still need that space away.
No, totally. You imagine going back however many generations or millennia, men have always hung out together, flipping gone out hunted, find us some meat to eat for dinner, or all in the army, or all in boys' schools, or all down the pit working, or all we were kind of forced into, all in the factory, all in the fields. We were kind of forced into hanging out, digging holes, building stuff like that. Like, we're kind of pre-programmed to hang out. And I believe that's an important part of unpicking like the real core of men, is that we are predisposed to hang out together. So now we get into this modern man picture where we do help out around the house and we don't expect our missus to do everything. But we have to remember that we're pre-programmed to hang out with other blokes. And what you've just said there about the skateboarding is that when we start to become a dad and do stuff and work, and then you go, oh well, it's not as much fun as it used to be, or I'm just not having. It's just not as happy. I'm just not as. Then you look at what. Hang on a minute. I used to be a skater. When did I last go skating? I used to DJ. I used to get my records out and play. I used to go fishing. I used to ride my. I used to. Like, if there's a thing you used to do and you stopped doing it, well, you better have replaced it with something equally as good, or you should go back and start doing that again. Because a core part of being happy is actually being responsible for your own happiness.
Yeah, exactly. We've had a couple of questions come in, and just as I'm going to ask those questions, I'm going to remind people that leave a comment of your question in the Facebook thread that you're watching this on, and I'll do my best to ask the question. So, we've had a question from Tony. It's actually two questions, so he's cheating a little bit, but we'll allow that. First one is, where can people get the book?
It's available on Amazon. So just pop in Being Fine, the other F word, and it'll be there, either paperback or Kindle.
Great, that's a simple one. And the second one was about the new book. So the second part of this, is there a way that people can find out about that? Are they looking for other people to get involved? What's the story with that?
Joe, at the minute, so this is the first edition that's out now. So we said on Amazon and in Kindle. There's going to be a second edition with some more contributors, possibly all men. We don't know, maybe some women. So there'll be some extra chapters, and that's sort of in production, as they say. So I'm not sure when the publication date for that, but there's definitely going to be a second edition of Being Fine.
But they could go to the Being Fine group on Facebook and just join. I mean, if you're listening to this and you're inspired by it and you think you've got something to share, then Jo's not going to say go away. She's going to be happy to talk to you. That's for certain. It's Jo Baldwin-Trott, and there's a Being Fine group on Facebook. Or I dare say, if the guy who's asking pings Lawrence a message, he can forward it on to Kapil or all of us, and we can pass it on to Jo. That's fine.
More than happy to do that. The bit that I also want to mention is that this is supporting a charity, this book, which is My Black Dog. So could someone tell us a little bit more about that charity?
Yeah, I thought in the front of the book, so again, if you're on Amazon, you're looking for it, that's what it looks like. There's an actual introduction from Niki, Clarke, who's a female, who's the founder of My Black Dog. I just thought I'd read a couple of bits out, actually, because this gives you an idea behind it and why she came up with the charity, because there's lots of different mental health charities out there. So My Black Dog it is. I founded the mental health charity My Black Dog to help people come forward and feel safe when talking about the struggles they are having. One of the most debilitating parts of suffering with your mental health is the anguish that comes with opening up and being honest with others about what you are going through, right? Which is kind of what we touched on. But the bit I love as well, in terms of how the thing's set up, is at the end of this introduction, she says, My Black Dog is an online peer-to-peer chat function run entirely by volunteers with lived experiences. They really do understand what you are going through. When you don't know who to talk to someone who gets it. So all the people who man it are people who've been there, because it's all right to have sympathy, right? But it's much better to have empathy. So that's why we're big fans of that charity, and all the money from the book goes to My Black Dog.
And what's really
Simon does volunteering for him, yeah.
Yeah. What's really important for me, Steve, is that online chat facility. I didn't realise how important that was until I did start volunteering. And what Steve said about people in the midst of depression, anxiety, loneliness, they can't find the words to verbalise. But you can talk to a total stranger via the computer because it's non-threatening. It's just the perfect way of opening up those conversations. So yeah, My Black Dog, what a fantastic charity. And really busy, and needs lots more volunteers.
Well, there we go. So if there's one of the main 4 pillars is contribution. So anyone who's watching this, you're looking for a way to contribute. Here's a perfect way you can step up and start volunteering around this. So we've been going for 40 odd minutes now. So I'm going to wrap it up. And how I thought I'd wrap it up is I'll go around each of you and get a kind of final closing thought or prompt or anything that you want to say. So I'll call you out. Let's start with Kapil.
Thanks, Lawrence. I think my final thought really is just encourage people to read the book. If you go on Amazon, we've had loads and loads of reviews from people, and everyone who's read the book has related it to themselves, irrespective of the gender, and just how powerful this message is. And especially, I think, in the current environment where, we've been in the lockdown, and now, hopefully it's going to open up and we're going to start meeting people. But what we don't know is just how much of a sort of issue people are battling with depression, with mental health, not being able to speak up, not being able to share their feelings. So I think especially this book and this work really is so important right now. And the message that if people are sort of feeling or resonate with this message, then there is help available. And then just like how they can share their feelings with other people. So that's what I would like to say.
Thank you, Kapil. Steve.
Well, we all know what the biggest cause of death amongst young men in the UK is, don't we? Suicide, right? So I used to think this was an old person's problem. Old men taught not how to talk about the feelings. So I think it's beholden to us men to support the other men that are going through things like this. And this book is just a starting point for getting that discussion going so that we can help bring those terrible numbers down.
Yeah. Thank you. Mike.
Yeah. So I would say, first of all, thank you. I've really enjoyed the chat. But I would say phone a friend, text a friend. I mean, especially now in these current times, we all know somebody who's in the family or extended family who has, or a friend who has specific pressures and struggles at the moment. So reach out, make yourself available. And I like what you were saying, Lawrence, about, once you share your own vulnerability, then that encourages them to perhaps open up a bit more.
Thank you. Simon.
Yeah, Lawrence, I'd just like to say it's been a privilege meeting you. And I want to follow on from what Mike is saying with the, going back to how we start those conversations around mental health. The Lighthouse charity, which is a charity for construction workers, has what they call the 3 golden nuggets. And the first is to ask twice. So especially us men, don't just say, how are you? And someone says, I'm fine, and walk on. Come back and ask them again. No, are you really fine? Because those, trying to find those words is really difficult, like we were saying. The second golden nugget is listen from a place to understand, not from a place to be understood. So you're listening totally rather than thinking about what you're going to say back to them. And the third golden nugget, be kind. As the Dalai Lama just says, be kind. And that's all we've got to do.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Jonnie, bring us home, please.
Yeah, I want to say to all men, you're not alone. It's a bizarre thing that men, particularly when they're struggling, just get on with it. Like, they're just like, I'm on my own. No one will understand. I'm the only one that's going through this. It's never been, no one has ever been through this. And we all have. We literally all have. And it's very easy for men to be successful. I'm successful in business. Great. Okay. Well, I won't tell anybody about the areas that I'm doing rubbish. I'm really fit and strong. I won't tell anybody that I'm devastated because my kid from my first wife doesn't see me. Like, it's really easy to hide our suffering behind our success. So, that's not a weakness to show that I've got it all handled here and I could do with some help there. We've the word vulnerable has come up a couple of times here, but just own it. Like, really own it. If you want the happiness that you believe you deserve in life, own it. Own the good and the bad. Be prepared to say, I'm great at this. Does anyone want any help with it? By the way, I'm rubbish at this. Can anybody give me a pointer or two? Because I've just written down here, what would you do if someone asked you for help? We'd all help.
Yeah.
So then why are you not asking for help?
Great, thank you. So, what a nice place to end on. I'm going to thank. I'd like to thank all you magnificent men for coming up and being on this, and for all you magnificent men that are watching it. Loads of stuff in there, but let's just bring it down to basically what it's about. A little bit of communication. Learn how to listen. Learn how to share, and we're going to make it a better place for everyone involved. It's the first bit of keeping our side of the road clean, I like to think. So we're going to finish there. I will put all the relevant links we've talked about, the Amazon link, the My Black Dog charity, and the Facebook group links. We'll stick that all in the comments, and wherever you end up watching this, we'll stick it all in. To the men in the group, please remember we do these talks every Wednesday. There'll be a different group of men coming in talking about how they're creating connection, how they're contributing, how they're challenging themselves and others, and taking an opportunity to celebrate each other and the things that we're doing. This is a community that we're trying to build here, and I often talk about keeping my side of the road clean, and this is the way that I try and one of the ways I try and keep my side of the road clean is by bringing men together in some way, in a non-competitive way, where we can support each other and share resources. So if you're watching a group and there's something you want to come to talk to us about, or you think there's something that someone I should talk to, please let me know, and I bet you end up on here. So I'm going to finish there. I'm going to finish the live stream in 3, 2, 1.